with another foundering car, and today we will discuss my personal experience with driving rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive. And the rear-wheel drive car that I owned had a mid-engine or rear engine rear-wheel drive, if you want to, like a 911. And a car with an engine in the front and rear-wheel drive I have never owned. I have driven the one of my wife and those of others, of course, but I've never owned one myself, because in my perspective I think you should have the road from the engine to the wheels driven as short as possible, and that's not the case with front engine rear wheel drive. I did own also an all-wheel drive car, but those all-wheel drive car had instead of transaxles, they had just two engines, one in the front and one in the back, which was a Tesla Model S, and also those engines were relatively light and low down, so they don't take too much space. So quite an efficient package. So that gives you a little bit of background. And I have had all the other cars that I had were front-engined, front-wheel drive cars. So you might conclude very rightfully so, that I have a, how do you say this? I was a little bit scrambling for words. Yeah, but I have a taste for front-engine, front-wheel drive cars, because I think they have quite good characteristics. And why is that? Because in my opinion they bring the optimal mix of space, the inner space compared to outer space, and also luggage hauling capacity, and also they have the best motors in terms of weight, and therefore also beneficial, because they have a direct driven solution at the engine is in front, and also the wheels are below that, so you have little parasitic loss. So how do they drive? Let's start with the front engine front wheel drive cars. They are very nice to drive, very stable and predictable. They also drive very well in most conditions. Only when it's quite slippery you will be much benefited when you have all-wheel drive, but they will perform better than a front engine rear wheel drive solution. So that's the thing. They have a little bit of understeer, so to say. They say that front wheel drive cars are less nice to drive. In my opinion, this is not the case. So it is there that when you have rear wheel drive you feel pushed, and it's a better feeling than feeling pulled, because instead of the back tires pushing you, the front tires are pulling you, of course, in the front wheel drive car. But that's a different feeling, but also that they are a little bit understeery sometimes makes them quite safe. And the type of front wheel drive cars that I buy are always very sportive, almost always. And there's also another trick that you can do, even without touching the handbrake, because I'm not a fan of that, because I think you will put a lot of strain on the technology, but to each his own. If you would use the handbrake, of course you can make more angled corners, even more so. But even without it, you can do a technique called lift off oversteer. So you lift off on the gas and then the car will settle itself even more. This can be especially dangerous with the older front-wheel drive cars from French makers. So that's the 205 GTI and 205 Rally, 106 GTI and 106 Rally, and also the AX GTI that I owned. Because then it is dangerous, because they will make an angle that they go into a drift, and that's the funny thing to do, but it can also be less controllable, because they're very eager to oversteer with liftoff. So in those cars the remedy is oftentimes don't lift the gas mid-corner, otherwise you will have a big chance of intercepting with a tree. Then the mid-engined, rear-engined rear-wheel drive car that I had was a very light one, Sigma Fun Extreme 500. It was about 380 kilograms, which is extremely light, the lightest car that I owned. Almost the weight of a heavy motorcycle. I think so, it was a Honda Gullwing or something like that. Could be in the same bracket of weight. But this had 4 wheels, 4 disc brakes and a 5-speed transmission. It had a 500cc 2-cylinder engine. It was very nice to drive. Of course, the speed was not such too much a thing because it is not that fast. But the thing is, you can go full on all the time, which makes it a riot, of course. And I changed a little bit about the engine, so it was a down-tuned Lombardini engine, and I knew that there was also another ECU that gave it the full oomph, and that was a good choice. The one thing that was bad about it is that the exhaust system was not suited for the higher frequencies, and when you go to higher RPM as well, because you opened up the ECU to full extent, those tremblings in the exhaust line would also increase. So I had to put a flexible exhaust piece in there to make it fit and make it complete. So that's what I did. But otherwise a very, very nice car. And also changed the air filter and the ECU and the exhaust, as you heard. Then to all-wheel drive, I think this is the end all be all. I had a Tesla Model S, and this is the best all-wheel drive you can get, because the electric engines are direct on the axles and they can have software interactions to adjust to what you need at the fly, which makes it awesome times 2. So this is the perfect solution. Always traction, never real wheel hop. Even on the full acceleration, this is perfection. But the thing is, the car as a whole was a lot, how to say this, a lot heavier and also a lot more powerful. So once you want to extract the power, you have to go decent speed. And in the new legislation, etc., and also the rules that are decreasing speed, this is, yeah, the result is that you don't have as much fun. Also because it's quite a costly car. It was a little bit different than the front-wheel drive front engine cars, which I like even more. But I'm not saying that the driveline of all-wheel drive is not perfect. It's perfect. In my opinion, it's the best that you can have. You have always traction. Also, your wheels will not suffer that much, even in a hard acceleration, because the wear and tear is more distributed. You don't have slip, especially with an electric car. So this is the future. But at this time point, I went back to the humble origins of the front-wheel drive car, because they are so light, which I really like. Also easy to park, and when something goes wrong, it's also not that big a deal. Hope you liked this video. Foundering Car out.